Now, the EFF says it's willing to work with the ANC, but only if the DA and the FF Plus are excluded from the Government of National Unity. This is revealed in a letter to the ANC Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula, penned by the EFF Secretary-General Marshal Dlamini. To elaborate on this further, we joined in studio by EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu. Floyd, a very good morning. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
No, thank you very much for having us, and good morning to the viewers of SABC.
Good to have you on the show.
Yes.
I mean, the main talking point, of course, is the EFF wanting to work with the ANC. So what's the response from the ANC?
Now, look, we've had thus far 3 meetings with the African National Congress, and then we had our last meeting on Friday, this past Friday, here in Johannesburg, to outline just what we think should happen. So our concrete proposal is that we should constitute a government with the African National Congress and other progressive forces that have got common and similar values. And we specifically isolated the issue of the Freedom Charter, that must be the common agenda and program that should guide such a government, 1. But 2, there must be clear commitment to the redress question as is contained in Section 9, subsection 2 of South Africa's Constitution, which says that a parliament has got the obligation to pass laws and legislation that should redress the imbalances of the past, with particular emphasis on the historically disadvantaged people, which in South Africa is the black majority and Africans in particular. And then we then also say that such a government should be defined by progressive internationalism, meaning that we should openly and progressively associate with the Global South and continue to participate in BRICS and other platforms that will then enhance and harness the Global South's agenda, instead of cooperation and collaboration with the imperialist, the neo-colonial world which has been dominating society for centuries now. So that is basically the agenda which we had set, that the should constitute a government with the African National Congress. And then, of course, what we explicitly and clearly stated was that we are not going to be part of the signatory to the document which was publicly first issued with the signatures of the Democratic Alliance Federal Chairperson Helen Zille and the Secretary-General of the ANC, Comrade Fikile Mbalula. We said we can't be signatory to such a document. We are instead proposing clear values that should define a government of progressive forces which we can participate in. And such a government should purposefully and intently isolate formations that do not want to deal with the redress question. Okay,
we'll get to the content. We'll get to the content of that in just a moment. But what I want to find out from you is that, you know, the EFF has traditionally and historically been a fierce critic of the ANC. I mean, you've traditionally taken a hardline stance against the ANC. But in recent months, it appears that your stance has softened. I mean, just going through Marshal Dlamini's letter to the ANC, I could pick that the EFF is now softening the stance towards the ANC. What triggers the change of mind? Is it because of the electoral misfortunes and the fact that, you know, voting did not go your way in Parliament?
No, I don't think that is the case. By the way, so every time we have discussions and agreements with the African National Congress at whatever level, we do agree with the issues of common interest. We're talking now that for more than 18 months now, we have been participating in the same government with the African National Congress here in the city of Johannesburg, in the city of Ekurhuleni, in Nelson Mandela Bay. We have been participating with the African National Congress in the government of eThekwini, in Maphumulo Municipality, in Mtsimaholo, here in the Free State. Then that has been based through proper and matured political discussions. And to the contrary, we have never participated in the same government with the Democratic Alliance. Even in instances where we could have voted for the DA and other opposition parties to constitute government, we have never shared government or participation with the Democratic Alliance. But with the African National Congress, we have always done that because we understand and appreciate that we at the core, we constitute a common historical mission.
But you've worked with the DA in the various coalitions, and you've also worked in you've had an informal partnership with the DA in the councils?
No, we've never had any co-participation or co-governance with the Democratic Alliance anywhere in South Africa since the formation of the EFF. So there's never been such an instance. There's never been a situation where EFF members sit in the same executive of a government in South Africa with the Democratic Alliance, and we will never do that. And that is the principle that we've always carried consistently. So that is basically what, and of course, there are instances and situations where, when there was just unreasonable and unsound disagreements from the ANC in terms of the policy proposals that we will give, we will then take a decision that instead of voting for ANC government, let us vote for opposition parties, whichever is available to constitute government. We did so in KwaZulu-Natal, where we had voted for in the IFP. In Metsimaholo, we voted for Forum for Service Delivery. In Tabazimbi, we voted for Tabazimbi Residents Association and different other formations. So whoever could constitute government would vote for them. But whenever there is a political agreement with the African National Congress, we have always constituted government and participated in the government where the ANC is present. And that is what is applicable in the areas that we have mentioned. And that is the point that we raised with the African National Congress, that despite the different ideological dispositions currently, but foundationally, there are certain aspects that we share a common view, but also we share a constituency. We have an obligation ourselves, the ANC, Umkhonto is a party, and other progressive formations to respond to the interest of our people. But we have got political organizations which are about the advancement of white privilege and white supremacy in South Africa, and they unashamedly do so. And those are the parties that we say should be isolated in a government of South Africa.
Now, Floyd, let's discuss the content of your proposition in granular detail. I mean, you say that you want to work with the ANC, but on condition that they walk away from their partnership with the DA and the FF+. I mean, which other party do you want to see in the government of national unity, considering that the ANC and the EFF combined do not meet the 50+1 threshold?
Look, we are proposing that we should constitute government with the African National Congress based on certain principles. We have isolated those, that Freedom Charter, progressive internationalism, and a commitment to redress of the imbalances of the past. And whoever agrees and associates with that should come into the party. So, and of course, there are so many other political parties which are willing to associate with that. But there are also those that are just coming because they just want to be government without any base principles. But we're 100% sure that of the political parties that associate historically with the liberation movement and liberation politics in South Africa, we will be able to constitute a stable government here in South Africa. What we were trying to, and actually I emphasize, we're not even trying to, what we're trying to do is to prevent, and intently so, a coalition between the ANC and the Democratic Alliance, because such is going to be disaster. It's going to totally swallowed the African National Congress into perpetuation of white supremacy and white agenda, which has been dominant even after the end of apartheid. And that is what we're preventing, because we know just what the Democratic Alliance and Freedom Front Plus represent in the political discourse of South Africa.
And you've always said that you are not desperate for positions.
Yes.
And the fact that now you want to get into a government of national unity with the ANC, it does insinuate that perhaps you want those positions that you say you're not desperate of. So do you have a preference of cabinet positions that you are eyeing, and how many do you want from the ANC?
I think for conceptual clarity, we said we want to constitute government with the African National Congress. We've never used like the issue of government of national unity is something else. It's what was signed by Helen Zille and Fikile Mbalula. We want to constitute government with the African National Congress. And in that letter which we wrote and
constituting government, doesn't it mean that you also have to be in cabinet?
No, it doesn't. No, let me give you the conceptual clarity, then I'll respond to your question now in terms of what you're asking about positions. What we communicated, one, in the oral submissions that we made when we met with the ANC and in the letter, is that we are not desperate for positions. When we constitute a government with the African National Congress, we'll still have a president or the president to have the prerogative to constitute a cabinet according to whatever he thinks is a balanced skill set and political balances that must be considered. But we're not desperate for positions. We didn't go there with a list of saying we want Ministry of Finance, Trade and Industry, Education, Home Affairs, Police. We said that let a president constitute a government which must take into consideration that these other political parties that will have constituted the electoral majority.
Your CIC initially said you wanted the position of finance minister, and there's been reports that you've been earmarked for that position.
Look, we have never, in any of our official engagements with the African National Congress or with anyone, ever made a demand that we want to lead National Treasury. We might as well be considered for such position, but we have never it's never part of our demands. It's never part of the demand of the EFF that we want to lead National Treasury. And then, of course, like if cabinet responsibilities are allocated, and then whoever is constituting such believes that we can play a role in National Treasury, will excellently do so in a manner that is responsive, in a manner that is going to utilize fiscal policy to drive industrialization and create millions of jobs.
Which means if ANC does indeed give you the finance ministry portfolio, should you decide to get into an agreement with, you take it?
Of course we will, because we have got the capacity to drive about meaningful change. Because South Africa has dismally failed over the last 30 years to utilize fiscal policy and also to even guide monetary policy in a way that is going to drive industrialization, to create jobs, but to also deal with the massive developmental challenges.
Yeah.
But also South Africa has been failing to optimally collect revenue, particularly from multinational corporations that exist, particularly in the extractive industries.
Yeah.
And such need decisive political leadership. And that is what we are as the economic freedom fighters. We're not ashamed of the fact that we know what is to be done. And we can do that if given the responsibility. But we are not desperate for such a responsibility because we did not win elections. We believe that whoever is leading government should be given the mandate to constitute a government so that it's properly aligned to whatever will be the common aspirations of the people of South Africa.
You know, Floyd, the EFF says that the ANC claims to be a gallant force of the left, when in actual fact they are not, and they are working at the behest of white monopoly capital. I mean, that speaks to massive policy and ideological differences between both parties. So now that the EFF wants to work with the ANC, it does appear that you are now compromising principle at the altar of political expediency and opportunism.
No, look, I don't think that you are reading the letter which we're discussing about today. What we characterize the African National Congress as is that is its own characterization, is that it's a liberation movement that is guided by the theory of the revolution of the National Democratic Revolution, which associates with the Freedom Charter. Those who joined the African National Congress commit to abide by the aims and objectives of the Freedom Charter. And of course, from time to time, it is ideologically contested. We are contesting its direction now, and we're doing so purposefully because amongst the ANC, there are people who are taking money directly from the white capitalist establishment who do not care about the interest of the people. And we cannot fold our arms when the establishment is contesting a historical liberation movement to want to take it to the dustbin of history by pursuing narrow white agenda and narrow capitalist agenda at the expense of our people. Because this liberation movement does not belong to Cyril Ramaphosa. It's contested from time to time, and we are contesting it. We did that when we were still in the ANC, some of us. We are still contesting its direction now. And that is why we're coming with a far much firmer, clear agenda as to how do we constitute a government that is going to pursue the interest of our people and fulfill the historical mission, which is about the emancipation of black people in general and Africans in particular.
Should the ANC approve of your proposition to be in a government with it, will you pursue the Phala matter?
Look, there are matters of principle, and like, just to give an update, by the way, we had at the opening, the constitutive meeting of Parliament, we had made an indication to the Speaker of the National Assembly that we want the motion of Phala and the impeachment process to be commenced. And of course, that is what we actually spoke about this with the leadership of the ANC, that we also even contested against the president of the ANC-DA alliance. We contested against the speaker of the ANC-DA alliance. we contested against the Deputy Speaker of the ANC-DA alliance because as a matter of principle, we stand opposed to such an alliance in terms of the principle that we've got to uphold. And the Speaker has since come back to us to say that she does not think that there is grounds enough now to proceed with the impeachment process as we have proposed in the constitutive meeting of Parliament. And of course, we're going to seek a political and legal guidance as to what do we do with an issue, because a political agreement must be with the African National Congress as to how do we constitute government, and that must be based on anti-corruption, anti-fraud, anti-wrongdoing as well. Yes. It can be a solid foundation if it's about protecting each other and turning a blind eye whenever there's wrongdoing. So that is not what we're asking for. We're asking for a principled agreement. We're not like the Democratic Alliance, which says that they are aligning with the ANC on the condition that the leader is Cyril Ramaphosa. And then even if it's Cyril Ramaphosa, they say, Helen Zille says, we want to take the Minister of Justice and possibly appoint our own National Director of Public Prosecutions and arrest the rest of the leadership of the ANC. That's what she says. That no, the rest we're going to put them into prison. The only person we're looking for here is Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. He's there. I don't know what is the reason. Maybe it's because of the historical association that are said to be existing between Mr. Ramaphosa and whoever is funding the Democratic Alliance. But that is the condition which the DA is giving. Ourselves, we are constituting and proposing a political, ideological relationship that is going to constitute government with the African National Congress, irrespective of who leads the ANC.
All right, Floyd, I'm going to ask you to hold your thought and just stay on.